All right, we're live.
All right. Today is Thursday, July 2nd, and welcome to 30 at 8:30, a show where we get to know various individuals, have candid discussion, and highlight their reasons for supporting the Republican Party. I'm your host, KJ, and tonight's guest is Brandon Cooper, Maryland Republican Party Vice Chairman. Welcome to 30 at 8:30, Brandon.
I am glad to be
How are
here. Thanks for
you?
having me. I'm going
Yes,
well.
thanks for good, good. So, for those of you who don't know Brandon, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Real quickly, as you mentioned, I have the honor of serving as the first vice chairman of the great Maryland Republican Party. Born and raised in Ohio, but I've been living out here in Prince George's County, Maryland, for the past 15 years or so. I moved here when I was around 18 to go to Howard. And after graduating, I stayed ever since. So I got involved in politics here in Maryland. One of my first campaigns working on was Dan Bongino, back when he was just a former Secret Service agent. And it's just amazing to see how his career has blossomed over the last 8 years. Worked on numerous other campaigns, of course, Governor Hogan's here in Maryland. Um, Went to law school actually in Baltimore City. And that's it. I mean, I don't know how much more. That's kind of my life
Wow.
here in the last
Yeah.
15 years or so.
Okay, that's a lot right there. So that's awesome. And you said you went to Howard. Did you say
I
Howard
did.
University?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. The real
All
HU
right.
for
How
anyone else maybe watching from
right.
Hampton.
Right. Yeah, really you.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Excellent. All right. And so you said you grew up in Ohio and then you moved here at 18 to, I'm sorry, was it DC or
Yeah,
like
DC.
surrounding
First
areas?
year at DC,
Okay.
and then ever since then, Prince George's County, and a few years in Baltimore
Okay.
City, but Maryland for the past 15 years.
Okay. Excellent. And then how has it been as the Maryland Republican Party vice chair? I know that's the entire state, so you kind of
Exactly.
get to go and meet all people throughout the state as far as Republicans.
And I think it's
How have you like that? Mhm.
it's going great. I think it's something that I've been doing for many years, even though not in this role. When I was at Howard University, I was chairman of the college Republicans there, right when Michael Steele became chairman of the RNC. So that was a very interesting experience in that endeavor. And then after leaving Howard, I came to Prince George's County, was chairman of the Prince George's County GOP. So I kind of feel like whether it's on Howard's campus, whether it's in Prince George's County, whether it's statewide, it's all the same thing, just on different scales. We're doing great work and just trying to get our message out and trying to elect good Republican candidates.
All right, excellent. Well, we always start out with a sort of get to know you segment with a fun game of this or that. So I've kind of combined this or that with would you rather. So based off of the option, just apply either one. So
Okay.
what will happen is I'll give you two options and you choose your preference. It's meant to go at somewhat of a fast pace, so you are selecting the choice that comes front of mind. All
All
right.
right.
Okay. Are you ready?
Hey, I'm ready. I love games.
Okay. All right. Black or African American?
Black.
Go go or hip hop?
Hip hop.
Colin Powell or Condoleezza Rice?
Condoleezza Rice. Condi, all the way.
Okay. Do you prefer to be a passenger or a driver?
Oh, driver. I get
Okay.
motion sickness driving. I mean, as a
Okay.
passenger.
Okay. I do too, actually, now. I don't know. It
Yeah.
just came all of a sudden. um, would you rather be rich or famous?
Wealthy, if that's the option, but rich. I'm gonna be rich than famous.
Okay.
Anyone knows me, I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy.
Right. Okay. Justice Alito or Justice Scalia?
Oh, Scalia. Scalia,
Okay.
hands down.
Redskins or Ravens?
Redskins, Prince George's
Okay.
County, even though it's DC, it's right
I knew
here.
you were gonna
The
say it.
stadium is in Prince
Yeah,
George's County, so
I knew you were gonna say it. Okay. Rescind DACA or protect Dreamers?
we send DACA. Is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, This one is kind of, I don't know if you watched this show, but House Stark or House Targaryen?
Oh, I love Game of Thrones. House Stark
Okay.
all the way.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
Jon
say,
Snow.
what was he gonna say? Yeah, me too. I'm a big House Stark fan. And lastly, The Wire or Power?
I like Power. I like them both. Let me say that. Power.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. See, this is fun
There you
segment
go.
where we just kind of get to know you. Yeah. All right. So next, the segment that I want to go into is pretty much why are you a Republican? And so I'd like to start off is, have you always been conservative, or when did you start your conservative journey?
And again, I get asked this question, over the past decade all the time. And so I always think about that question when you ask that. I think about my grandmother who passed away last year. But my first political memory, I grew up with my grandmother in the house as well. My first political memory was sitting at the kitchen table back in the 2000 election with Gore and Bush, and at dinner with her, and just something about what Bush was saying at the age of, I had to be what, 12, 13 at that time, just resonated with me. And so I remember getting into political discussions with her, and she was, a lifelong Democrat and supporting Gore, but something, about the common sense solutions he was providing, I just gravitated towards that. And so I've been a lifelong Republican. I tell people all the time I'm a first generation Republican, and also first generation college graduate. So yeah, lifelong Republican for sure.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think you are probably the first guest that I've had that's a lifelong Republican.
Yes.
And so I've had people who say they changed over in 2016 or just recently. So you're like the first one who's
All
pretty
right.
much a lifelong Republican. So
Well, we're a big party,
that's
so we
awesome.
welcome them all. And I always tell people in our
Mhm.
advocacy, particularly in the Black community, when 90% of us in the Black community historically vote Democrat, the only way we're going to grow our party is by getting former Democrats to come over. And so some people may look at former Democrats who are now Republican differently. I don't, because that's just the reality of our community. And so whether you're a lifelong Republican or just in the last few months, welcome aboard.
Okay. And then, so my one question I wanted to ask you is, how was it being a conservative, a Republican at Howard University? Were there many of you there, or how did you navigate? How was that?
It was interesting you say that. So when we started, it was a small group, and I was actually like the first vice chair, the chairman, and when I joined it, and eventually became chairman. We're about 20 strong or so, you can say, and it was during the 2008 elections or prelude to that. And so obviously Obama's election was getting big, and so the college
Right.
Democrats were growing as well. I always like to point out that right after the election, the following year, we tried to do a panel his first year in office, and there were no college Democrats no longer active on campus. Their college Republicans are going strong. And so I always say that just to highlight that we made a small number, but we were, strong in power. We invited Michael Steele to campus his first year to speak, packed out the auditorium. You can Google now and find news articles about it. It was interesting. So to your point about how it was being a Black Republican at Howard, I'll be honest. Everyone I talk to, a lot of my friends I still hang out with from college, I'll say majority of them are Democrats, but they respect me. They understand me because they know my heart, they know my passion, and they also understand, as Bill Clay said, one of the co-founders of the Congressional Black Caucus, we don't have permanent enemies or permanent friends. We have permanent interests. And so, we've been seeing a lot about it this year with Joe Biden's comments about, Charlemagne, that if you're not sure who you're voting for, you ain't Black. The reason that backlash from that, from Democrats and Republicans, was united, was because we know that we're not a monolith in that way, and that we don't want to be taken for granted as we have for one party for a while. And on the flip side, we don't want to be ignored as we have on the other party for a long time. So we're kind of fighting a two-front war. And all I can say is, I thought it was bad back in 2008, being a Black Republican on Howard's campus during the election of Obama. But seeing what's going on the last 4 years is just, I can only imagine being on college campus nowadays. It is crazy, but it wasn't bad. So to your point, just to wrap it up, I think I built a mutual respect with those on campus, never had any issues. I've voted for McCain, not Obama, and people,
Wow.
obviously had
Okay.
comments to say about it. They had comments to say about it, but we explained our view. we had a political discussion, and then we went out to have lunch in the cafe, in the caf, or hang out on campus, regardless of ways. I'll say there'll be one professor who I think treated me differently in my grade because of my political opinion. But other than that, political science chair, staunch Democrat, really encouraged my diversity of thought. And so I think I was blessed to be able to go to Howard. And really, it strengthened the reasons why I'm conservative Republican on many fronts. Learning about the history of our community and our fight for civil rights in this country, for me at least, strengthened my connection to the Republican Party.
Okay, okay. And one thing you mentioned is the vitriol that has kind of come about within the last couple of years, and it has gotten much more combative, much more combative.
Yeah.
And again, like I'm a new conservative. I was Democrat, and I changed over about in 2015, and I've even gotten like crazy messages. I started a conservative club on Meetup, and people would send me these crazy emails, and especially since I'm Black, and it was white people questioning me. That was the crazy thing.
Those are the best ones, I'm telling you. I worked on a campaign, just real quickly, in Kentucky, Matt Bevin's campaign when he ran for Senate the first time. He eventually became the governor. The most vitriol I receive is not from Black Democrats, it's from white liberals, hands down. They are the most aggressive and rude, and in some senses racist when it comes to finding out that I'm a Black Republican who doesn't vote liberal. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to your point about the backlash you're receiving, I can attest to it. It wasn't at Howard University where I received the worst backlash. It was running around the hills of Kentucky where there's some white Democrats. That was the worst.
Wow. Okay. Now, as you know, Baltimore City's predominant demographic is African American. So, what would you say to a Black resident of Baltimore City, DC, or any city across the US that says, I get the Democrats have run the cities for decades and many are failing, but what can Republicans do for me? And that's what questions I get a lot. What can Republicans do for me, and what have they done for me?
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to point out. There hasn't been, particularly in Baltimore City, it's been one party rule for the longest. And I always say again, I am for first vice chair of the state party, but I always say vote for the candidate, not the party. And I say this all the time.
Okay.
I've said it before. There are good Democrats and there are good Republicans. There are bad Democrats and there are bad Republicans. And so first thing I would say is that if you don't know who you're voting for, if all you know is the D, I think one of the most stupidest slogans I've heard is vote blue no matter who. I just find that to be insulting and just hurtful for all that we're trying to do, because we can point to some Democrats here in Maryland, Delegate Lasanti up in Harford County, who feels comfortable calling parts of Prince George's County in district. I don't want to say the word, but an N-word district. So there are good Democrats, good Republicans, bad Democrats, bad Republicans. I think a lot of my Democrat friends, particularly in Baltimore City, I think 1 out of 3 voters in Baltimore City voted for our Governor Hogan, who's a Republican, on the highest turnouts for Republicans. So what I'll say to them is that first, if you don't come up to conversation first with an open mind, recognizing that you can vote for a Republican, you can vote for a Democrat, but it matters what that particular candidate is doing. If you're not even able to start looking at politics that way, I don't see how, we're going to progress any further or get any changes in Baltimore. Because again, when they know, I saw a lot of articles in the Baltimore Sun right now, past this primary that just happened in Baltimore City, they're saying basically it's over. They're not giving voters, they're basically taking away an election from voters. You have an election this November, but a lot of media outlets and also candidates are acting like the election's over. When we do that, they have no more obligation to come and provide change for you guys. And so to your point again, what would you say to residents of Baltimore? I would say if you have an elected official who's been there for, 10 years, are you happy with what's going on? And whether or not you vote Republican or you vote for another Democrat, one of the biggest things I hate is we need term limits, because whether you're a Republican or Democrat, there's no reason to be in there for decades upon decades. But I think that's the biggest thing, is breaking out of this mentality, particularly in the Black community. Because you look at other demographics, whether it's white, Hispanic. 1 out of 3 Hispanics voted for Trump in 2016. The females are 50-50, just about. Whites are 50-50. Every community you look at splits a sizable portion of their vote for both parties, except the Black community. We're the only demographic that is 90% tilted either way. And I think that just, politics is, I won't say it's a game, but it's a bargaining process, and it kind of takes away our bargaining when one side knows how we want to vote for them, and the other side kind of ignores us because they feel like, oh, there's no point, there's no chance of getting that vote.
Exactly. And like you said, it does us a disservice. We want them to work for our vote. And when we go about it this way and just say, oh, they automatically have our vote, then it's like, okay, well, we know we have the Black vote. Let's move on to some other group or whatever and fight for them, because we know this is already pretty much in the bag. So I totally agree with you on that. And that's the conversation I try to have.
Speaking about the fighting part, what I see sometimes is that here in the Black community, we fight each other. You got people calling Black Republicans Uncle Toms and stuff like that. We fight each other over a party instead of having the two parties fight each other over us. And I wish we could change that perspective so that the Democrats and Republican parties are fighting each other over our vote instead of some of us in our community fighting each other because we choose to vote our conscience in different ways.
Exactly. And so what do you think is probably one of the biggest issues affecting the Black community, urban communities in the upcoming election? Do you have anything?
I mean, I always, I did a lot of consulting work. I used to work at the RNC, work for numerous candidates. And so candidates are always asking me for messaging tips. And I always tell them, whether you're Black, white, Latino, at the end of the day, you want to provide for your family. That's kind of like the biggest concern for any American, is you want to be able to have a comfortable life for you and your family. So economy is always number one. I think that's, regardless of your demographic, there are, it's economic. Now, when you look at our community, there may be different nuances to that and how those issues are impacting us and what's our priorities. But I think economy. I think that's definitely the key issue this election. We're seeing with the impacts of COVID. Unfortunately, a lot of us are, I saw an article just recently that Blacks are getting hit worse when it comes to unemployment. And I think that, we know the saying that when America gets a cold, the Black community gets the flu or whatever. We get it harder no matter what. And we're seeing it right now. The whole country's feeling impacts of COVID, but particularly in service industries. Thank God I work at a law firm. We're able to telework and do my job remotely. And so we've not, we've had some issues, but not too much. But unfortunately for more of the service industry, people who have to do the work in person, retail, restaurants, stuff like that, those you can't really do remotely. And so those are you're seeing getting hit harder with the layoffs. And which demographic do you think makes up a disproportionate amount of the service industry, of the grocery stores? And so I think that's going to be one key. We're going to see those impacts going past November, and we just have to find a way to deal with it. I know there's issues with rent. People are having struggle being able to pay. Unemployment. I know here Congress is now trying to stop the $600 extra they're giving a week for unemployment, which the merits of it we can discuss another time. But regardless, that's going to impact the pockets of people in Baltimore in the Black community. So I think economy is definitely the big issue heading into November.
Yeah, I agree. Economy and public safety is for me. I live in the city, been here for about 15 years. And, I've seen how it's kind of, the crime has gone up. We've had more break-ins, more robberies, all kinds of stuff down here where I live. And so that's kind of been a big issue where I am. So,
but see, to that point, and you're asking, it's this big issue for the election. Not everything can be solved by government. And that's another reason why I am a Republican conservative. I don't, we always talk in the Black community about the man, not trusting the man. I've always had a distrust with the government. And so I prefer limited government. Obviously, there need essential services like police, fire, a hospital. But when it comes to crime, there's definitely a role for the government. But I think a lot of that, I know Giovanni Patterson's running for President City Council, talks about it a lot. It's the family. And so some parts of it, I don't think the government can solve. And so one thing I did after graduating from Howard as well, I was part of 100 Black Men at Howard as a mentee. I was being mentored by members of 100 Black Men. And when I graduated, heard they're starting a chapter here in Maryland, so helped in starting a chapter in Prince George's County. And now I'm with the Maryland chapter of 100 Black Men. And we do mentoring, and we reinforce in the community what I think the government cannot do. And so I definitely think crime is an issue, and there's definitely a role for government. But I think, saying the African proverb, takes a village to raise a child, it's a lot going on in our community that we are going to have to address on our own with nonprofits like 100 Black Men and other civil rights organizations in order to get that addressed. So I definitely think crime is an issue. I clerked in the Baltimore City Circuit Court after graduating law school in Baltimore. And so I saw too many of us on the other side of the bench getting sentenced for crimes. And people don't know this, but after you get convicted of a crime, the court goes through your background and tries to understand how you got here. And after I saw a couple of those, I'm seeing common factors that result in people ending up in the criminal justice system. A lot of them, almost, I say over half of them, didn't finish high school. So education is a key aspect of it, and broken families is another part of it. Their parents were in jail is another part of it. So there are things in the community that we can take a look at to try to address that public safety. But I definitely know, working in Baltimore City Circuit in the court, I've seen the end result of what you're talking about as far as public safety.
Absolutely. And like you said, the family, the unit, and that's what, like you said, Giovanni is running his campaign on, or is basing his campaign on, is sort of like the first level of organization, first structural unit that you come into contact with. And so when there's a breakdown there, there's all kinds of problems can occur. And I think that is one of I was reading Thomas Sowell's book, and he talks about that. He talks about how one of the largest predictors in success for African Americans are kids that are brought out of a two-parent household. Even something as small as they get more vocabulary because you have two people in the household. So kids hear more words, and then they start to develop a more extensive vocabulary, and then two incomes. So
exactly, and I'll say this: I'm a proud product of a strong single Black mother, and so there's no at all. People hear that saying, "Oh, don't two-parent household." It's not saying that it's anything wrong, because I'm a first-generation college graduate and a product of a single household. But like you said, there are things that are beneficial from having that family structure, like you said, two incomes and more vocabulary words, things like that just are undeniable, have an impact on the lives of kids. So definitely agree.
Yeah, I agree there too. I'm the same way. I'm the oldest of four, single parent household, but it was hard. It was hard for my mom, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot. So like you said, definitely the value. I see the value just now as I'm coming up and I'm raising my son with my husband. It's tough if you don't have somebody there.
It's tough, so, when you got one or two. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. Thank you, Brandon. So please, as we wrap up our chat, can you tell people how they could connect with you? And also, please tell us about any events or any initiatives that you have coming up where we can support you with that.
Well, definitely. I'm on Facebook. I'm a prolific person on Facebook. I don't have other social media handles, so you can find me on there. You can go to our website, mdgop.org. You'll see my bio, and I think my contact information is on there as well. So yeah, as far as upcoming events, this COVID has really changed how elections are run. And so again, I'm doing elections for over a decade across the country, and I am at a total loss trying to advise candidates how to campaign with social distancing. So as far as upcoming events in person, there are not many. I'm so thankful for what you are doing here on this live stream. People talk all the time about doing things in Baltimore City. I've been involved in Maryland public politics for about 10 years now. This is new and it's great, and we can keep it going. So I'm really excited what you're doing here. So stuff like this is great, and hope to be on in future shows as well. So I continue to share updates. Hopefully, when everything's reopened, we'll have some events as well coming up that we can get people involved in.
All right, excellent. One thing I did forget to mention, I saw in your bio that you study French. Do you speak French?
Wait, man, yeah, I did. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in French and political science. I haven't really practiced as much as you can see. I don't know if you see behind. I do have a lot of francophone things in my house. So yeah, I did study French, studied abroad for a year in Martinique, Caribbean countries, and some Afro countries in Africa as well, Franco-African countries. So yeah, I did graduate from Howard with 2 bachelors in French and political science. I've obviously used the political science degree a lot more since graduating, but it's still there. Right. Kind of like riding the bike.
Yeah. You don't use it, you lose it. Yeah, I'm the same way. I took French. I didn't graduate with a degree in it, but je parle la plus le français. Je parle la...
J'ai beaucoup de langues, donc I've read a lot of it, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, looking here, that wraps up this episode of 30 at 8:30. So yes, that wraps up this episode of 30 at 8:30. Like, share, and leave a comment on the Baltimore City GOP Facebook page. We love to get your feedback. To support this show and other events, head over to www.baltimorecitygop.org and donate. We appreciate every contribution. Again, that's www.baltimorecitygop.org. Lastly, why are you a Republican? If you'd like to share your thoughts and why you support conservative values and policy, email me at kmckenzie01@gmail.com. I hope to connect with you again next Thursday at the same time. Wishing you warm days and starry nights. Good night.